right, good afternoon. This is the Mgrp Podcast for English 102. My name is Spencer Linton. This is the first and only time I've done a podcast, so we'll see how this goes. I'll try to keep it concise and not ramble too much, although I can't make any promises, but I know you probably got a lot of grading to do, so I'll just get on into it. Okay, so the topic we have in class is mental health, and the topic question that I have done all my research on to this point is, can a positive attitude impact mental health for the better? Can a positive attitude help improve your mental health? And based on my research, well, I'll get into that. Let me first state my opinion, I guess. Going into it, I typically would say, if I were asked the same question, okay, so can a positive attitude help you feel better? Does it make you feel better? Can it, help your mental state? I would say yes. I would say overall, yes, to a point. Of course, life happens. You can't always be positive. I think that's unrealistic. And as we'll get into, most of the studies say it is unrealistic. It becomes borderline delusional to always be positive, to always be chipper, to just ignore all the bad stuff around you. No, you gotta recognize what's going on. But I will say, just overall, based on my personal experiences, positive affirmations, stuff like that always kind of, if anything, it helps to distract what's going on. Stress, you're having a hard time in school, work is stressful, your boss is down your neck, just taking a deep breath, saying, it'll all be okay, it always gets better, the typical things you hear. And me being a guy, I feel like, also these are just my opinions that I'm stating here, but as a guy, I feel like, being pouty, being a bummer, as some people would say, isn't always fun to be around. So guys will say to each other, hey, why don't you just cheer up? Why don't you just have a positive attitude? Why don't you just think brightly? Think about the good things, not the bad things. And that sometimes it helps. It really depends on what's going on. I would say it's hit or miss. Sometimes you can snap yourself out of it and go, yeah, you know what, I am being, I am being a bummer. Sorry, my bad. I am being a bummer. But, sometimes you gotta, face what's going on. So, got the topic question. Now I'm gonna go into a little bit of research. First, I'm going to talk about how studies show that only being positive does not work. So, the Journal of Depression and Anxiety state, ignoring symptoms of mental issues can form long-term damage. Okay? So, the more you put off getting help, the worse things can actually get. This goes into ignoring your issues, saying no, everything's all right, I got this, everything's okay, I don't need help, I don't need therapy. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that. No, I don't need therapy, I'm fine. Are you fine? Are you really fine? You know, I've been to therapy. I went to therapy for a year. I've had a lot of stuff going on, and so this is also me speaking a lot from experience, but the studies kind of back up what I'm saying here. Therapy isn't always a bad thing. Oh, it's not a bad thing. You should really give it a chance if you need it, is what I'm saying. So, seeking help before things get possibly worse is what the journal is saying here. Seeking help can save you from having developing, I should say, a chronic issue. Like, you know, if you're really stressed out and, you know, you're just really feeling down and you just can't pull yourself out of it, that is probably a good sign. Well, poor choice of word, maybe not a good sign. It is a sign that you need help, more than likely. You should seek help. And that's what I would recommend. So, the journal also states that while having a support system of friends and family is good, if you're a adverse impact on you, I need to quit reading from this. I'm gonna try not to read from this. Okay, do over, real quick. Okay, so this journal that I'm pulling from, the Journal of Depression and Anxiety, states that having a good support system is very important whenever you're, you know, feeling anxious, feeling down, feeling depressed. Having those people that can, you know, lift you up, that's the positivity. Having other people kind of lift you up whenever you're down, that's very, very important. What the journal is actually saying, though, is if your support system is not as positive, then that can also have some negative effects on you. So having a good support system who brings you up, lifts you up positively, means that, you know, you yourself, you don't have to force yourself to be positive if you have all these positive people around you who, you know, gives you a hand whenever you need it, you know, helps you out, just overall is a better thing than just trying to force yourself to be positive, especially when you know you can't do it. So again, like, if you feel like if you're really forcing positivity, that can have a negative impact. Okay, so what this journal also did was use a scale to measure stress in, I think it was 106 participants, and this scale was the perceived stress scale. Okay, what this scale did was measure it measured the perceived stress that these people were under. So, for instance, the scale used 10 items on a list, and people would have to either answer on a 0 to 5 scale of how often that item on the list stresses you out. So, like, 0 would be never. Don't feel any stress with this particular thing. And then 5 would be the most stress with this particular thing. Okay? So the scale focused on perception of stress and highlights not only exposure to stressors, but also how the people interpreted the stressors. So the perceived stress scale showed that, of course, the more stressful you thought a particular thing was, the more likely you had some sort of like mental issue, like depression, anxiety, stuff like that. So, moving on, keeping with the perceived stress scale, moving on to another piece of paper. Higher perceived stress scores correlated with, obviously, greater depressive symptoms and lower positivity ratios. Additionally, this study says that the relationship between positivity and mental health is proportional. So, like, you know, the worse off you were, according to this scale, the more stressed you were, the more, depressed, the more anxious, the more you hurt, the lower impact positivity will have on you. Meaning that you can't just, gung-ho your way through it and, positive affirmation your way out of this slump, out of this feeling. No. In fact, the higher your score was on the perceived stress scale, positivity, just in general, actually could have a negative impact on you. So it could make things worse, which would be not good. So if you're that bad off, truly seek some help. Don't try and force it. Don't try to force a positive attitude. This is all a case against positivity helping mental issues. I'll get to the other side of the coin here in a minute. Also, I just want to reiterate that, if things are really this bad, and it does. What I'm saying is, all hope is not lost. It says it in the study too. So, if you're really just struggling and you think you just can't get your way out of it, you tried this, keep seeking help, keep pushing. Things will hopefully get better. But the number one things are just don't ignore your issues, don't push things down, don't push them to the side. That can really damage your psyche, that can really make things worse. You can develop chronic depression, chronic anxiety. You really don't want to end up there. That's where you're taking medication all your life. You might even still struggle. So really try and find the help that you need. Okay? So, switching sides. Now I'm going to talk about how positivity can actually help you, just based on these studies. So, first, I'm going to talk about placebos. And what a placebo is, especially in the medical field, it's like a pill that's just simply made up of sugar or starch or some inert substance. It's not medication. It's just a little food pill, basically, that you take. It does nothing. It should do nothing, but it's crazy how effective placebo pills are. This part was really fascinating to me. Okay, so yeah, that is what a placebo is. A placebo works by playing on the expectancy of a positive outcome. So, the studies that have been on placebos themselves, basically explain that why these placebos work is because, one, you're expecting a positive, you're expecting to get better, so you're kind of tricking your brain in that way to where, you know, you're thinking like, oh, okay, I'm taking this pill, I will feel better, and then that plus that equals feeling better. And you've seen this in the case of, they did a study with people with like psoriasis, again, like the mental health issues even, people who, you know, were taking a certain medication and also a placebo, showed improvements versus like patients who were taking a certain medication and then lowering the dosage. The people who were taking medication plus a placebo were outperforming those people. I'm probably making this very confusing. I'm going to slow down for a second here. So, yeah, that's basically the placebo, how the placebo works. So, yeah, so a clinical study showed that patients with psoriasis, like I was just talking about, on half placebo and half a corticosteroid had significantly lower relapse rates than those who had their doses lowered without a placebo. So these people who, you know, two groups, same issues. One group had a placebo and their medication. The other just had the medication. They're weaning both of the people off. The people who did not have a placebo added with their medication relapsed more. People with the placebo showed improved signs, even though they're taking this less and less of the medication, the same less and less medication that the other group was taking. Because in their mind, they're thinking, I guess, tricking their brain into thinking that they're, you know, still getting the same amount, they're still improving, they're still getting better. So, very fascinating stuff. Let's see here, moving on. Okay, so the same study on the placebos also tackled the criticism that, okay, you're giving these people placebos without their knowledge. They don't know they're taking placebos, is what I mean. So they were saying that in order for a placebo to work, you essentially have to keep it hush-hush. You can't tell the patient, otherwise the placebo won't work. In the same study, they also disproved that because they gave patients a placebo and also told them, hey, this is a inert substance. This will do nothing for you. It's just a placebo. And they give them that placebo. And still people with, you know, IBS issues, you know, the depressive issues, you know, psoriasis, all that, they still showed improvements, which I think, in my opinion, it does show credence to, you know, a positive mindset helping a person's case. It is kind of shrouded in the concept of medicine, but still, I think the same thing applies, based according to this study, that, you know, even though the substance, even when the patients knew that the substance wasn't going to do anything, it's the positive affirmations that were coming with it. Hey, I'm going to get better. Things are going to get better. Thus, they got better. I think that does kind of play into the argument that, okay, positive mindset can actually help mental state, and they even tested with people with depression and anxiety and stuff like that. These people were getting better. So while a positive attitude can help, it can also depend, again, on certain things being in the right order. So what I'm trying to say is, certain factors like environment, personality, if you're a negative person and you're always, putting things down, like, no, that doesn't work, no, maybe positivity probably isn't going to work. But if you adopt an optimistic mindset and apply a little bit of positive thinking, saying like, okay, things will get better, listing, all right, here's what I'm thankful for, here's what's good in my life, here's what I have, these are the people that love me. The study shows that actually does help. Putting a positive spin on things can actually help. But like I said, it depends on your traits, your personality, your environment. If, like with the previous study on the Journal of Depression and Anxiety, if you do not have positive people around you and you're really trying to be positive, things aren't gonna work as well, because it's like taking 2 steps forward and 3 steps back. You're putting in the effort, but the people around you might be dragging you down. And so I would also say to that, surround yourself with people who help you. You gotta take care of yourself here. So that's my argument for the positive thinking helping mental issues, stuff like that. So in conclusion, I guess, positivity, a positive mindset can help, but to a point. And it depends on you. Depends on the kind of person you are. If, like I said, if you don't think positivity will work, then forcing a positive mindset would just be pointless. So go and get the help you need. Either way, go and get the help you need, whether you have a positive mindset or not, if you feel like you need it. But yeah, that really depends on you. So the takeaways: don't try and force a positive mindset. That can make things worse. Surround yourself with positive people that lift you up. Okay, don't force it, but try and surround yourself who care about you and have your best interest in mind. Seek help when you need it, and yeah, that is all I got. Thank you for watching, and